Hello, OTCers. It's that time. It's Monday. And today, because we're the other side of the Champions League final, we're going to be talking about a few moves. And the big move that looks as if it's happening in European football is that of Florian Wirtz of Bayer Leverkusen going off to Liverpool. It looks like that's on the right road at the moment. So where we are at the time of recording is Florian Wirtz has said he would prefer to go to Liverpool, which has come as a real shock to Bayern Munich. It's been a couple of weeks now, so presumably they're at least halfway over it and looking at alternatives. And despite the links to Manchester City, slightly lesser link to Real Madrid, of course, because his coach Xabi Alonso has gone there, and Wirtz and his future was never tied to Xabi Alonso, so quite apart from the financial aspect, that was never really a full-on goer. So that leaves us with Liverpool. And this is straight off a huge step for Liverpool in the transfer market if they can get this one over the line, because Wirtz has been a player who has really, I think, at least partially dominated European football over the last year and a half or so. A huge role, of course, in Leverkusen's double winning season of 23-24, an almost treble winning season, of course, falling short in the Europa League final against Atalanta. And this season he's been, I think, until he got injured in spring, maybe even better, because he hit hard in the Champions League from the off. Another double season, double figures in goals and assists as well. And the bit where the bottom kind of fell out of Leverkusen's season a little bit was the bit where he was injured, because he's absolutely irreplaceable. He got injured in the first leg of the game against Bayern Munich in the Champions League and didn't come back for a number of weeks after that. And by the time he came back, they were done in terms of defending the Bundesliga. They were already out of the Champions League, of course, and they ended up going out in the semi-finals of the DFB Pokal, shocked by Arminia Bielefeld, who went on to lose to Stuttgart in the final. So Wirtz and Leverkusen have been the perfect pairing. And where we are at the moment in terms of the transfer is, as I said, he's given his preference to Liverpool. We're not quite there on the fee yet. Leverkusen had put up a minimum fee of 150 million euros that they wanted. They know that the powers that be at Liverpool have been given the go-ahead to go at least near that figure. So the negotiation, even though they're quite a long way apart on the fee at the moment, it appears, the overall feeling, certainly on the Leverkusen side, is that they'll get there at some point in the next little while. Now, of course, there's been talk, particularly in Germany, of part exchanges in terms of players. Harvey Elliott, one that would perhaps interest Leverkusen going forward. Of course, Erik ten Hag, the new coach of Leverkusen, really knows his Premier League football and presumably would love a bit of Harvey Elliott in his team. The problem, as with always with bringing players from the Premier League, is the wages. And that always makes it a bit of an onerous ask, really, to include a Liverpool player as part of the deal, even if you can get a projected Liverpool player to come, whether it be Elliott or anyone else. The wages make it quite a tricky ask, particularly for a player who's in their early to mid-20s, rather than someone like Granit Xhaka, of course, when he came over from Arsenal to Leverkusen, going back a couple of years now, and what an influential player he's been. But the feeling is that Liverpool, Leverkusen and Wirtz will get there. So that's something to really look forward to, I think, in the Premier League next season. Now, I guess we have to ask next, why is it that Liverpool, apart from wanting to make a statement, wanting to make a big noise in the transfer market, having had quite a slow transfer market last summer, that's something that some Liverpool fans were fretting about, but it turned out to be absolutely fine, of course, because they'd done their reconstruction of the midfield the summer before. A lot of people asking, where will Florian Wirtz fit? And I think it's a reasonable question, because he is a number 10 primarily, and number 10s are not players who we see in the Premier League. Authentic number 10s are not players we see in the Premier League very much. Now, I guess what strikes me immediately is, and while we define Florian Wirtz, we have to define him as a proper number 10. I remember speaking to Xabi Alonso about him last year, and he was always quite keen to emphasise, and Alonso is always quite keen to emphasise, that he wants players to express themselves within the parameters that they're given. So he says, tactics are a framework, but within that, I want the players to interpret the role as they see fit. Now, he always said, and he said to me when we talked about it last year, Wirtz is a little bit different. He is someone who's got such incredible technical ability that you have to give him that little bit more freedom. He always said, players know what is expected of them within a role, but with Flo, he's got a little bit more freedom, was the way he put it. And I think that's quite interesting, that he's got the ability to drift into a sort of false nine position if he wants, drop a little bit deeper to find the pass, go and find space in either flank. And I think this has huge implications for Liverpool. I mean, obviously, one of the things that people have looked at with Liverpool over the past season, will they go and buy a proper number 9, if you like, because Darwin Núñez has at best been a qualified success since arriving from Benfica. Okay, he's had his moments, but if he was sold tomorrow, I think most Liverpool fans would understand that. Now, Wirtz, of course, is by no means the same type of player as Darwin, but what he could do is fit into a Liverpool front three and maybe offer them a slightly different way to play as well. So say, for example, you were to pop Wirtz in the centre of a front three with Mo Salah on the right-hand side, Luis Diaz on the left-hand side. I actually think that would quite work. Not because Wirtz is a centre-forward or going to become a centre-forward, but if he's someone who drops into deeper positions, you're almost creating a front two with Salah and Luis Diaz. And of course, Luis Diaz has played a lot of time at centre-forward this season, and in certain games done really, really well. I think you think of the game against Bayer Leverkusen at Anfield as a really good example of that. He's someone who can get in those central positions, score goals, win headers, do a lot of things that we think that traditional strikers should do, as well as be a goal scorer. So I think that would be quite an interesting switch to the shape of what Liverpool are about, really. It's all about movement, of course. It's not about them being stuck in particular places and not moving from those places. I think the other thing that would do, of course, with Wirtz is remove a bit of the creative burden from Mo Salah. Now, Mo Salah has signed that new contract. They want him to make the most of his coming years at Liverpool. And I think they probably want to lift a bit of the overall burden off him to really make the most of the next couple of years that Mo Salah has, and maybe just boil it down to goal scoring. You know, we know that's something he can do very well. We know he can do all the other stuff very well as well. But he carried a lot of the creative load for Liverpool last season. And with Wirtz coming in, maybe we lift a bit of that burden for Mo Salah and make what might be a good next season into a good next couple of 2 seasons. And that would be a huge asset, a huge benefit to Liverpool. Now, could Wirtz do other things like start on the left and drift inside? Yes, he definitely could. I think there are a load of different ways that you could use Wirtz in his new team. But I think really the major one for me, I would love to see that front three where Luis Diaz and Salah almost become a front two, which I think is what Real Madrid had in mind when they brought in Kylian Mbappe. Of course, a different player to Wirtz in a slightly different situation. But we've seen a lot of front two Real Madrid with Ancelotti. And I think players who you have specific ideas and specific expectations about, even if we know them really well, they can always surprise us and do something a little different. I guess the other thing is for Liverpool, as well as adding an element to their team that they didn't have before, as we said, this sends a message to the opposition. This sends a message that we have won the Premier League. We've been the best team in it by a mile. We could have gone a little bit further in the Champions League. Of course, they came up against a great PSG, and the result of the Champions League final and the manner of PSG's performance in it, I think, probably makes us review exactly the way that Liverpool went out, and that they did take them to penalties. And when Liverpool were back in February, March, they weren't quite as good as they'd been in October, November, which was perhaps the peak of their season performance-wise. So I think it shows just how good Liverpool are and just what a contender they will be for the Champions League next season, particularly if they're able to add a few extra A-plus elements like Wirtz to this side. But I think as well it's about taking possibilities away from the opposition, not just Manchester City in terms of the Premier League. And I think, it's maybe better in terms of balance for the Premier League when you think that City are going to hit hard in the transfer market this summer, and they already did a bit in January, of course, in bringing notably Omar Mamouche and Nico Gonzalez. I think for the balance of the Premier League, it's a good thing for Wirtz to go to Liverpool. It's unlike them. And I think when the speculation started immediately coming out, people doubted it was true because Liverpool don't really do this sort of size of deal. And I think for them to do that, to take him away from a possible move to Manchester City is good. In terms of composition in the Champions League, to take him away from a possible move to Real Madrid is good. And to take him away from a possible move to Bayern as well. Now, Bayern were all in for him. And certainly Uli Hoeneß and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge spoke a lot in public over the last 6 months, year, to the great irritation of Leverkusen, by the way, who felt like they were trying to put them off at key moments of the season, particularly around that Champions League last 16 tie that we were talking about before. That they felt, Bayern, that he would be perfect to pair with Jamal Musiala. Now, Julian Nagelsmann, the former Bayern coach, almost kind of opened the door to how good Wirtz might be at Bayern by when he went into the Euros last summer saying, okay, you're saying we can only have room for one number 10 in our team. Well, I dispute that. I'm going to put both Musiala and Wirtz in the starting lineup. It worked really well. They look really, really great together. It made Germany exciting to watch. It was kind of built on the 4-2-2-2 that Nagelsmann had at Leipzig, and is very much part of the Red Bull school of thought in terms of playing and tactics. So it was interesting to see him use that system to incorporate two number 10s, and that was the idea with what Bayern were going to do going into next season. As I said before, they were really shocked when Wirtz turned around and said, no, actually, I would prefer to go somewhere else. Now, Florian Wirtz's dad is his agent, and he had a lot of long chats with Uli Hoeneß, and they felt that it was going pretty well from both sides. In fact, when Wirtz Jr. started to show a bit of, I'm not that sure about this. And it seems that Vincent Kompany came out of the long chat that they had and thought, I don't think he's going to sign here. Florian Wirtz's dad and agent said to him, well, do you not want to have some time to think about this? And he did have some time to think about this, and he still had the same opinion that he wanted to go to Liverpool at the end of it. And as well as being good for German football, with my Bundesliga hat on, because I think Florian Wirtz going to Bayern really kills the league. I think he's such an outstanding player with such a big future at only 22 years old, so much longer to grow as well. He's someone who you sign not for the next 3 or 4 years, but maybe for the next 7 or 8 years. I think that would have had a really big impact on the competitiveness of the Bundesliga going forward. So I think as well, when we look at Bayern as a team that can go far in the Champions League, it's another good thing for Liverpool to be able to take him away from Bayern too. So, look, there are loads of benefits to this. I feel that it is a big statement from Liverpool, and also something that gives them so many options. And we talked about how it was evolution rather than revolution when Arne Slot arrived at Liverpool. He sort of built on what Jurgen Klopp had done, in particular in his last year, a transitional year that has stood Liverpool in really good stead, I think we can all say now, but that Slot's changes were not major, not sweeping, but subtle, because he'd been left really strong foundations by Klopp. Well, maybe this is the point at which, football-wise, philosophy-wise, they start to change things up a little bit. So I can't wait to see what Florian Wirtz is going to do in his first season at Anfield when he gets there. What do you guys think? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, as always. Remember that you can join us on the podcast, OTC, every Thursday. Me, Dot Adebayo, and guests. Obviously, we'll be talking a little bit more about transfers as the football thins out, although we've got the Club World Cup to come. And remember, every Friday, we can always answer your questions on Ask OTC. Get at us on the socials or leave them below the line here. We will see you for another Monday debrief next Monday.